Look up at any given moment, and there are roughly 10,000 commercial planes in the sky. We live in a world where it is a basic expectation that every object, especially a massive passenger jet, is constantly tracked, pinged, and connected. That expectation of total connectivity was shattered on March 8, 2014. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur, heading to Beijing, with 239 passengers and crew on board. This is the view from a control tower. Less than an hour into a completely normal flight, controllers watched the aircraft suddenly vanish from their radar. There was no distress call. There was no emergency message. It presents an immediate, glaring paradox. How does a massive commercial airliner, packed with modern communication arrays, simply evaporate into the night? The disappearance of those 239 people exposed a reality we hadn't considered. Despite all our advanced technology, global tracking systems had severe, unrecognized blind spots. The investigation began with a void where data should have been. This diagram shows how commercial planes communicate. They use a device called a transponder, which constantly pings ground stations with the aircraft's specific identity, altitude, and speed. On MH370, that transponder was abruptly shut off. The moment it powered down, air traffic control was effectively blinded. The plane was immediately erased from civilian tracking screens. This severing of communication left investigators with competing theories they simply couldn't prove. The silence could point to a sudden, catastrophic mechanical failure, or it could point to deliberate human interference. Finding the plane meant searching for signals that were never intended for tracking. The routine flight route had become a blank canvas. While the primary radar was blind, investigators found evidence in an unexpected place: automatic satellite logs that contradicted the initial blackout. Look at this map. Even though the transponder was dark, the aircraft's internal systems were still making automatic, hourly digital handshakes with a satellite overhead. These returning signals proved the plane continued flying for several hours after it fell off civilian radar. But it was no longer flying towards Beijing. The satellite data placed the aircraft's final known position far off its intended route, deep in the remote southern Indian Ocean. This shifted the search from the regional coastlines to a global effort, a needle-in-a-haystack search in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. This is a photo of a naval ship isolated out in that water. It illustrates the massive scale of the response. Countries from around the world joined forces to launch one of the largest and most expensive search operations in aviation history. Fleets of ships, aircraft, and specialized underwater vehicles were deployed. They spent months scanning deep, heavily pressured ocean trenches, looking for any sonar return that matched a Boeing 777 fuselage. Years passed. The initial grids yielded absolutely nothing, amplifying the mystery surrounding the missing main wreckage. Then, physical evidence began to emerge. Look at this jagged piece of wreckage on the sand. Years after the disappearance, confirmed pieces of MH370 debris finally began washing ashore on distant islands and coastlines. Finding these pieces conclusively proved that the flight ended in the ocean. But a scatter pattern of debris alone cannot explain the actions that led to the crash. That brings the investigation to a hard reality. Despite recovering fragments of wings and stabilizers, the main fuselage and the flight recorders have never been found. Those recorders, the black boxes, capture the mechanical data and the cockpit audio. They are the only tools capable of proving what was happening at the controls during the aircraft's final hours. Without that central data, the official investigation was forced to close. They could not definitively confirm mechanical failure, a hijacking, or deliberate action by a pilot. The investigation stands as a lesson in the limits of deduction. The evidence can tell you where a plane ended up, but it cannot tell you the truth of why it happened. The disappearance did expose an unacceptable reality. A massive passenger jet could simply vanish over open water without anyone knowing its exact location. The industry reacted. The tragedy acted as a direct catalyst, sparking immediate international mandates to overhaul oceanic tracking technology and ensure planes are constantly broadcasting their location. Look at these memorial photos and flowers. Behind the radar data and the satellite pings, there is the devastating human reality of 239 lost lives. Their families, along with dedicated oceanographers, continue to push for new underwater search efforts, which leaves us with a lingering question. Will advances in sonar and underwater robotics eventually uncover the main wreckage, or will the full truth remain hidden in the dark forever? Global aviation rewrote its rules to keep planes on the grid, but MH370 itself remains an unsolved puzzle, a vanishing act that redefined the limits of how we monitor the skies.